Welcome to Awakened Titans podcast with Lily Patrascu, mind-blowing conversations with influential business titans sharing how you can manifest abundance, love, joy, success through quantum awakening, quantum manifestation, quantum healing, quantum miracles, exponential business growth, and innovative products and services. Discover how to become the best in your field in today's episode with Andy Semotiuk. He is a U.S. and Canadian immigration lawyer, and he's practicing U.S. and Canadian immigration law with Pace Law Firm in Toronto. And he's a current Forbes columnist where his articles have been read by over 1 million readers. Former United Nations correspondent who wrote on immigration and human rights themes. And he wrote for the Southern newspaper chain in Canada. Former Canadian public television producer of a 1-hour public television show in Edmonton through Shaw Cable. And he's active on social media, doing webinars, interviews, using Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. He's a member of the bars of New York and California in the United States and Ontario, and a BC in Canada. He helped over 10,000 clients with legal problems in his career while traveling extensively and speaking on immigration themes all around the world, including the UK, Hong Kong, New Delhi, Ukraine, and Fiji. So the first question is, what's the secret to your success?
Well, I guess the main secret, and I'm very happy to be with you here on this program, the main secret that I think I could share with the viewers and listeners is that time is money and time is life. Don't waste time. So, for example, in my career, in my life, I value every moment and I try to make the most out of every moment. An example might be in terms of my travel time in the car or on a train or on an airplane. I don't go anywhere without a book or some audio book or some material to read. I try to take advantage of time, for example, in doctor's offices while I'm waiting for the doctor, or the dentist's office, or any place, for example, while I'm waiting for someone to attend a meeting, or perhaps in a restaurant. I will always take materials with me that I can read and fill the time constructively. I try to also plan my days in such a way that each day I accomplish at least one task of significance from my point of view. That would be the major secret that I could share with people who are listening.
Thank you. And how did you become an awakened titan? How did you awaken to your titanic power so you can become the very best in your field?
Well, I would say this is the secret. It's to find your God-given unique ability and put it into the service of others. It's difficult to sort out what it is that you are unique about, like what is your unique talent. But if you'll spend the time and focus searching through your life and your interests to find that unique ability, there will be nobody that will be able to compete with you while you work in your unique ability. And the key is to put it to the service of others, in the sense that since you're working in your unique ability, hopefully the quality of what you're giving other people will be higher than the quality anybody else can give in that area. So I would say that's the way to focus your life, to make the best out of the studies you've had, the experiences you've had, and by learning from what's happened in your life and your background, you can better hone your unique ability. And a little bit more about unique ability. You can learn about your unique ability by asking yourself some key questions. Number one, what am I good at? What do other people tell me I'm good at? When I'm involved in what things do I find that time races by and I forget myself? I get immersed in the materials or in the activity I'm involved in. What makes me feel strong and energetic when I get involved in it? Those are some of the questions that help identify what are your unique abilities. And that would be, in my view, the way to sort out where you need to go and what you need to do with your life.
Thank you. What's your blueprint for entrepreneurs worldwide to awaken to their titanic power so they can become the best in their field?
Well, I go back to this blueprint, this unique ability, and I'll just share a way of kind of working it out. And the way would be if you could imagine that we had a computer right over here sitting beside us that was connected to all the databases in the world, everything, every medical database, police database, educational database, every possible source of information. It would be sort of like ChatGPT on steroids. And let's imagine you are looking to see for yourself what would be your unique ability. What you would do is you would make a list of all the abilities and skills you have. Let's say, for example, starting with simple things, knowing how to make, say, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, all the way through to writing essays, or perhaps to performing on stage, or perhaps to brain surgery, whatever it might be. If we made a list of all the abilities that you have, and we then put it into this computer and said, sort these abilities out for me, and let that computer also search out in its database everything it knows about you to list all your abilities. I believe that exercise would end up, if you ask the computer to list these abilities in 4 categories: incompetent, competent, excellent, and unique ability. I believe if you got a printout from that computer, what you would find is most of your abilities would fall somewhere in the center, competent or excellent. Some would start out with incompetent. For example, in my case, if we're looking at doing my income taxes, I'm incompetent. I know it. My tax attorney and tax accountants know it, and certainly the government knows it. This is something someone else has to do for me. I'm not competent. But that's an example. And then over on the other side would be your unique ability. And that computer would spit out for you 1 or 2, maybe 3 areas where you would be unique, that you would be far better than anybody else in the world. And this is something that would be discovered, A, by you, because you identify it, and B, by this computer. It has to resonate with you. You may be very good at something, but it may not be your unique ability. The difference between very good and unique ability is the passion you're willing to invest in the activity you've identified. Only unique ability is involved with great energy, great passion. You love it. You love to do it. You'd do it for free if you had to. Hopefully you get paid for it. But that would be the unique ability you're looking for. And that's what I looked for in my life. And I found that one of my unique abilities is to work in the area of immigration.
Thank you. I love what you said. And the reason I love what you said was because I think it can take a long time to figure out what you're so unique about, like what's your unique selling point, what's your unique thing that you're passionate about. And the reason for that is because the thing that makes you so unique is so common sense to you. It's so easy for you. It's so fun. It's so exciting. It's so beautiful that sometimes you can even think it's not such a big deal at all. Because you're thinking everyone knows that. Everyone surely has an understanding of exactly the kind of thing that you know a lot about, that you're passionate about. Surely everyone knows that. And it's so easy, so fun, so exciting for you that you're thinking everyone has that ability. And that's the reason why a lot of the time it's actually harder for some people to discover what they're unique about, they're unique in, and it can take a little bit longer to discover it. So, for example, for me, I for a long time had no idea what my unique thing was, and it took me a long time to discover that I love to discover beauty in people. I love to unravel the beauty in them, the diamond in them. And I do that through books and through branding. And I think that it can take, especially for young people, a lot of time to discover what they're so good at. But when they do, I think that's when they feel properly aligned with their path. Which brings me to the next question, which is, how did you become an awakened Titan? What was your journey? How did you discover your passion? What you were amazing at? What was it, that thing? Was there a particular experience that awakened your drive to make a difference to immigration issues?
Well, I'm glad you're asking that question. I'm certainly in agreement with you on the issue of not knowing your ability necessarily, that you need to ask people also about yourself, because you may think it's simple, but other people may think, wow, that's very complicated. You're looking at something that's very hard to do. So we agree on that. But in terms of answering your question, let me share this sort of insight from my career. I mentioned that I think one of my unique abilities is immigration. And as I went into the legal community, I studied law and I went into the legal community. At first, when I opened the door, I thought, well, anybody who walks in the door, whatever they want, that's what I can give them. After all, I'm a lawyer. I should know everything. And I soon realized that, it's hard to be really good at wills and estates, criminal law, corporate law, contracts, torts, whatever. And I started realizing that, hey, I'm overstretched. I've got to kind of narrow down what I'm doing. And so I started cutting things out of my practice. I started honing in on the things where I knew more and where life resonated with me in terms of when I was involved in that. And slowly but surely, I got down to immigration. But then even in the immigration field, I realized, hey, wait a minute, immigration's a big, big subject. In fact, when I was in law school, the big subject, the biggest and hardest subject was, for me at least, and I thought for many people in my class, income tax law. Tax law was a killer subject. And it was the most, hardest in terms of the amount of material you had to go through and what you needed to know. But as I got into the immigration field, I realized, wow, immigration is getting really hard too. There's a lot of stuff to learn. And pretty soon I realized, wait a minute, even in the field of immigration, there's so much to know. I can't be an expert on everything. I have to narrow my focus even more. So this narrowing of focus is what started my sort of exponential growth in my field. And then I realized, wait a minute, it's not immigration that I'm so, motivated by, but it's in the field of communication about immigration subjects. Now, there's a topic that really, really resonates with me. Now, if I told that to my first year English professor at university, who's dead now, he'd roll over in his grave because I barely made it through English 100 in university. In fact, he took pity on me and gave me a passing grade only because he knew if I don't pass English, I'm not going to be able to go forward in university. But over time, I started learning how to communicate more effectively. And you'll see over my shoulder over here, there's a little tablet, a little award that I won. And what it is it's the Distinguished Toastmasters Award. I became a member of Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an organization that cultivates speaking and presentation skills, as well as leadership skills. And for 35 years, I attended Toastmasters meetings, club meetings, once a week with a club, watching people give presentations and get feedback for their presentations, to the point where after 35 years, I finally got this award, which is one of the highest awards you can get in Toastmasters, the Distinguished Toastmaster Award. Only 1% of the 330,000 Toastmasters worldwide become distinguished Toastmasters like I did. So I thought, wow, hey, I'm pretty good at presentations, at giving presentations. And I thought that's what the world wanted from me. But little did I know that it was not necessarily so much presentations that the world wanted. It was more writing. And I started writing. And I ended up writing for Forbes as a contributor. And indeed, by writing for Forbes, I've had articles that have been read by over 1 million people. It seems that's what the world wants. So there's a trade-off. There's what you want and what the world wants. And you got to go to the highest compromise between what you feel is important to you and what the world wants from you. And in my case, it boiled down to communication. And so the answer to your question is communication was the key in my case to become the titan that you're talking about.
Wow. And how did this realization influence your business strategy? And what did you do in your business to kind of use that communication?
Well, this comes back to the unique ability and communication. Having realized that communication is really the area that I'm most passionate about, but also working on immigration, because it seems the world has a lot of need for immigration issue, someone who works in the field of immigration. What I came down to was I decided, okay, I'm going to become the best I can be in the field of immigration law by writing about immigration and communicating, giving talks all over the world about communication. And that's what I did. But I also realized something. No matter who you are and what you're doing, you can't be perfect. Nobody's perfect in this world. And if you measure yourself against perfection, you're going to find out you don't make it, that there's always someone who's better. No matter how good you are, there's always someone better. But the important thing to remember is that you don't have to be the best in the world. In fact, all you have to do is consider who you are, what you're doing, and how you compare to others in the world. Now, just because you're not the best in the world doesn't mean you can't be in your unique ability and give to the world the uniqueness that you have. But do not measure yourself by perfection. Measure yourself by excellence and compare yourself not in terms of, where your faults are and why these people are better than you, not that kind of comparison. But when people criticize you or attack you, consider if the attacks that are made on you, and the higher you go up in your field of excellence, the more likely there will be people out there that will take pot shots at you and try and knock you down a notch or two. When you face those kind of criticisms, always remember, you may not be perfect, but when you compare yourself to your colleagues who are in the field, you may compare pretty good. And that's what matters. If you compare pretty good, if you're pretty darn good, and okay, not the best, but pretty good, I think that's where you should be. That's your unique ability playing out the way it should.
Thank you. And how can entrepreneurs discover what they are best at?
Okay, the answer to that question is find one thing that you're really, really good at and study it. Within a period of 5 years, no matter what the topic is, you can become a world expert at it. If after 5 years you found out you're not the world's expert, it means that you haven't focused enough on the area that you have chosen to be your field of expertise. And I picked this up from a friend of mine who was a nuclear physicist and a professor up at York University, a guy named Professor Yuri Daravich. And one day I was talking to him and I was saying, how could you be a nuclear physicist? I mean, that's like beyond anything I could ever possibly be. And I said, how can you handle that? And he said, well, I don't handle the whole field. I've become an expert in one little piece of nuclear physics. And by studying that area and becoming really knowledgeable about that area, I can compete with my colleagues and contribute a lot to the profession. So similarly, anybody who's out there listening and wants to make a dent or make a name for themselves in whatever field they choose, the way that they can do that is by picking a field, as I say, and read everything there is about that field. Within 5 years, you should have read everything there is in the world about it. And if you have, you will be one of the world's experts, if not the world expert on the topic you've chosen. And there you go.
Thank you. Why is it important to you to become the very best in your field?
It's important because I believe it's part of being on this earth to, as I said earlier, find your unique ability and put it into the service of others. That formula, in my opinion, is a formula for a happy life, a successful life. If you asked me, what is the purpose of life? I would use that formula, or certainly answer, at least to some extent, that is the purpose of life. But let me add another couple of things in this area. Another way of looking at things is what Zig Ziglar, who was a very popular speaker in the United States, he's passed on now, but what he used to say, and something that I hold dear in my heart, he used to say, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. That's a kind of an allied philosophy to what I'm talking about in the area of unique ability. The other philosophy, the wrong philosophy, is what some people also have. And that philosophy is to talk about what I want and forget about everybody else, to hell with everybody else. That's probably not the way to go.
Thank you. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned while trying to become the very best in your field?
Well, one of the biggest philosophies that I cherish and that I've learned is what's called the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule, generally, it's known by that name. It's a rule that an Italian economist named Pareto discovered, studying the Italian economy sometime, I think it was in the 17 or 1800s. And he came to the view or understanding that 20% of the people owned 80% of the wealth in the country. Another way of looking at it was 20% of the people are making 80% of the income in the economy. And this rule is translatable pretty much anywhere. For example, 20% of the people in our law firm, Pace Law Firm, make 80% of the revenue for the firm. Another way of putting it is 20% of the people in a club or organization provide 80% of the outcomes that you're trying to achieve in an organization. Now, it may not be exactly 20-80. It could be 25-75 or 10-90, but roughly 20-80, 80-20 is a guide to go by. But a real breakthrough in my life was when I looked at that rule and listened to some people, some speakers who talked about it and converted my understanding of that rule to another kind of a way of saying it. And that other way of saying it is that in any field, there are maybe like 4 or 5, maybe 6 things that make 80% of the difference in what you're trying to do. So try and focus on those 4 or 5 or 6 things and spend 80% of your time on those 4, 5, or 6 things, and devote 20% of your time to the other things that you're involved in trying to pursue a specific goal. So this 80-20 rule is so significant. It can be so valuable. You can apply it in many ways. So, for example, if you're, let's say you're a president of the United States and you have to run the country, what you might do is list all the areas that you have to work in. So you might make a list: the economy, defense, environment, emergency services, all these, the list of all the areas that you're involved in. And you would apply the 80-20 rule, the formula that I gave you. Maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 of these areas are the most important areas to deal with. So you're going to spend 80% on those areas. But to break it down even further, you might take one of the areas, let's say it's the economy. You might say, well, what are the 4 or 5 or 6, maybe maximum, things in the economy that we should do to make 80% of the difference? And then you might pick out one of those 6 and say, well, what could we do in that area? Let's say, for example, in the area of fighting inflation, what are the 4 or 5 or 6 things you can do in inflation to keep the inflation down, and so on like that. There are many ways to use the 80-20 rule. And that was a key rule for me in terms of career advancement.
Thank you. I'm getting a lot of wisdom from what you said. And I'm also sensing that you have a deep love for humanity and for young entrepreneurs today. And I'm curious, what drove you to have this deep love for humanity and for entrepreneurs today, so much so that you are willing to share this amazing wisdom? And we all know, lawyer time is very expensive. And instead of that, you're here, you're sharing your knowledge and your expertise with potentially thousands of entrepreneurs. So I'm curious, what drove you to do that?
Well, the answer is, in my career, I helped over 10,000 people with various legal problems. And many of them were young professionals. So as I worked with these young professionals, I soon realized that there were 3 areas where young professionals were having problems. The areas were, first, money; second, time; and third, balance. Those 3 areas, not only young professionals, everybody, even people like you and me, are usually stuck or working on one or more of those 3 areas. So I decided I'd write a book. It's called The Young Professionals. And in that book, I focused on those 3 areas. And so I talked about, for example, money. In the area of money, I shared the 80-20 rule. Well, first of all, I shared the unique ability rule. That if you're serious about getting somewhere financially, a key to succeeding in the financial world is to find your unique ability and put it to the service of others. Just to give you an example of why this works or how this works, let's take the smartest guy in the world, Einstein, okay? He was the best physicist the world ever had, but he was a lousy basketball player. In the field of basketball playing, he would have been a disaster, but he was fantastic when it came to physics. So you focus on the area of your strength. And if you do, the world will reward you. You will rise in your importance in that world, in that field. And that's a kind of, you might say, God's way, or the way of the universe, or whatever way you feel, the world is evolving. It's that higher purpose that's deciding for you. You need to be, and in my case, I described earlier, Here I am, making presentations all over the place. And then I realized, wait a minute, the world wants me to write. It seems that writing is important also. That's in the area of making money. In the area of time, the problem with time is we don't have enough of it. And I talked to you in the beginning, right off the bat, I said to you, one of the key things in my life is this realization that time really boils down to life. Time is life. And what you do with your time is what you're doing with your life. If you're sitting around a pool hall watching people play pool or billiards, or sitting at a TV set all day watching reruns of, I don't know what.
Friends.
Yeah, yeah. So, some program or some crazy, love, one of these old songs. Yeah. Maybe you should check and ask yourself, is that the best investment of your time? Is that going to make you a better person and make your life better if you spend long hours doing that? And in the area of balance, you have to ask yourself, what are the key things that are important to you? Not everything is important to you. What are the key things that are important to you? Now, they may be things like you may be religious, so religion or God may be important to you. You may be a social animal, so socializing may be important to you. You may be someone who likes to pursue knowledge, so knowledge or intellect might be important. Whatever these values are that you identify for your life, and I can't go and tell you what's important for you. You have to decide what's important for your life. But once you do decide what's important for you, you can sort out what you're doing with your life by looking at what's important to you and asking yourself, are you spending enough time? For example, if family is important to you, but you're at the office until 12 o'clock every night and coming home at 1 and going to work at 7, there's something wrong with your values or with your behavior, and it's probably your behavior. So you can say, well, I need to change this because I'm not paying enough attention to my family, which is an important value in my life. And so you have to balance it like a wheel. A person who's out of balance, for example, Van Gogh was a genius. He painted beautiful paintings, but his life was a catastrophe. Like all that was good was painting, and thank God he painted. But otherwise, if it wasn't for his brother, he would have starved to death. His brother looked after him, cared for him, found him a place to live, and so on. So he was out of balance. Now, in our case, out of balance, we could say, well, but he was a genius. Well, true. And at times, you have to be out of balance in order to achieve something more than others might achieve. So, for example, when I went to law school, I spent a lot of time in law at the law library. And I was out of balance relative to everything else. Like, when it came to socializing or, playing music or being with my family, I had to spend more time in the law school and less time doing those things. So for a while, you can be out of balance. But the key is overall in your life, are you in balance? And so those were the themes that I put into this book, The Young Professional. And all my books are on Amazon. Anybody can buy the book on Amazon. So that's The Young Professional. And I've written some other books as well. I wrote one about an opera star. It's called Salomia, Star of the Golden Age of Opera, which is a book about my great aunt, who was the world's leading soprano. And I mentioned to you earlier before we came on the broadcast here that I have a story about her. It may be a little too long for right now, but she rescued the opera Madame Butterfly from a disaster to make it one of the world's great operas. So there's that story in that book. And there are other books that I've written.
Thank you. As an author of multiple books, you have so much wisdom. What's the very last message you want to leave to entrepreneurs worldwide?
Well, I'd have to go back to the earlier messages that I gave you in terms of paying attention to what is going on from moment to moment in your life and making sure you're making the most of every moment, because every moment is your life. This moment, right now, when we're talking together, you have to ask, is this the best possible moment or thing that I can be doing in my life? And if it's not, then you have to ask yourself, well, what is? And why are you doing this instead of what you feel is the most important in your life at this moment? But being conscious of the expenditure of your life energy in every moment and not improving yourself with every step in your life by, ignoring or misusing what talent you have is the wrong direction. You're going up the wrong road. You got to turn around, go the other way. So that would be the message I leave for people in regard to this program.
I'm so glad that you said that, because today, and I really had no idea what you were going to talk about on this podcast, but today I was thinking about how can I make today the best day of my life, and what would that look like? And I think it's good to think about that and to try in every moment to kind of make that moment a wow moment, because it's, even if, let's say, you're broke and you don't have the right partner and you don't have, I don't know, whatever else, the right furniture or a bigger house, or I don't know, whatever else you would desire to have. Even if you don't have that, there's so much that you do have that right. I think we need to kind of come back to and remember and be grateful for. And I think when we do, that's when you get filled with so much joy, so much energy, so much enthusiasm. And that's when you have the energy to become the very best you could possibly be in your field.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential business titans, providing you with the insights to awaken to your full potential, so you can get paid to be yourself, find true happiness, and manifest anything you desire.